Action. You're on, Duane.
Thank you, Michael. I would like to extend my appreciation to the Moya University for this opportunity to share with all of you. With special appreciation to Mike, BL, and Rose for their support and their technical assistance. And of course, all of you who have taken your valuable time to participate in this Zoom meeting. Now we're going to do a review on two subjects that we have worked on quite extensively. And the first one is going to be an update on AI. I had earlier, I think it was 2 meetings back, I had requested that any participants who are interested might share how they could see AI being used for developing or sharing the ageless wisdom teachings in a new way and to a wider audience. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start a video and think of my request as you view this video, and then we will open it up and have a discussion. But this is one of the most cutting edge AI videos in relationship to color, light, and divine geometry, which we all know was one of the main themes of all of my presentations.
I've created an entire world out of light. Welcome to the mesmerizing world of 3D QGA, where art, geometry, and light come together to create breathtaking visual masterpieces. I'm Amitai Angor, the visionary behind this groundbreaking project, a decade in the making. So, what is the 3D QGA method? It all starts with injecting spectrum light into spherical geometric 3D objects. This radiant light, with its vibrant spectrum of colors, forms the heart of our journey. We then apply this light to a spherical geometric model, transforming a flat, 2-dimensional spectrum into a dynamic, 3-dimensional canvas. And here's where the magic truly begins. By shifting our perspective and altering the light source, we breathe life into the image. Each change in lighting reveals new facets, new depths, and new details. As we continue to shine light from different angles, stunning images start to emerge. These aren't just pictures, they are a harmonious blend of color, shape, and light, creating an ever-evolving spectacle. What makes the 3D QGA method so revolutionary? The images it produces are infinite and can resemble real-life elements. We see images that look like faces, animals, flowers, and so much more. The way colors spread within the geometric complex can't be created manually, it's born from layers of millions of colors, which are the very essence of light itself. This is cutting-edge research, unveiling visual phenomena never before seen. The incredible output couldn't be seen otherwise, hidden within the frequency modulation of the graphical string that envelops the spherical 3D objects. And the best part, this can be achieved using any 3D software, making the possibilities truly endless. Each image is unique, a testament to the limitless potential that the 3D QGA method offers. It's a dance of light and color, where art and science unite to form a symphony of visual splendor. This method shows various real-life look-alike images and resembles faces, animals, and flowers. Remember, this is not about pre-made 3D objects, but about discovering 3D frequency-based, sacred geometric images by illuminating them from the inside with a light source. As we change the light source, these visual embryos come to life and become visible. Join us in this exciting exploration of the 3D QGA method. Let's redefine the boundaries of creativity together and discover a world of light and color like never before. The research began around 2014, when I started experimenting with combinations of geometric shapes stacked in complex and dense patterns. Slowly, I began to realize that these compressed shapes yielded fascinating color combinations when the spectrum of colors was injected through them. Without injecting the colors, the shapes are incomprehensible to the eye, invisible. All you see is a vast mist of dense polygons overlapping each other, a complex web of lines and shapes that appear completely illogical. As the colors are injected through this infinite network of shapes, something perfect begins to happen. New forms which shouldn't really exist come to life through the unknown. I started creating countless shapes continuously, day after day, to see where they would lead me and what this geometric density could produce. I was amazed to see an entire world of shapes created from dense waves of graphics at different frequencies, with different color spreads, each time discovering further advancements in the research. The significant leap came with three-dimensional graphical embryos. And once the kaleidoscopes began to take on frequency and density within a spherical 3D envelope, everything became clear. I realized that the possibilities were endless. When strange shapes and those resembling living creatures, animals, faces, body parts, and more, along with famous symbols like yin and yang, mysterious elements, a heart. I understood that the way nature is created is from embryos encoded with information. Through this innovative graphical method, I saw that the similarity and parallel between infinite creation and the creation of nature overlap and touch upon the same ideas. Butterflies, eyes, flowers, beautiful mandalas, almost like colors from other worlds, various chalices, birds, and much more. The perfection of each image, each structure, each animation. And the movement of the spectrum within the dense objects led me to discover a whole world of supreme colorful shapes never seen before. After 10 years of research, I can confidently say that the way light penetrates through geometric shapes and the frequency of the structure through which the light penetrates create an incredible world never before seen in the entire world. This is a real revolution in new artistic creation. This method is still unique. Even though I have been working on it for many years, I have witnessed millions of changing variations of masterpieces that have changed my perception of the entire universe. Of course, I am not sharing all the shapes and findings here, but if you are interested, I will continue to publish more about the research. I truly believe that this method is groundbreaking on a global scale, and that it is our duty as humans to explore it deeply and harness it for the benefit of all humanity. We may discover such great secrets in the future using this technique, whose results will influence our understanding of the cosmos. There are many findings I have not included here. As they are numerous, I have selected colorful findings that I love and thought would be suitable for the web for an intriguing video, and although there are many more examples and many findings. Like how numbers and letters are formed from graphical waves, how textures are created from graphical frequencies, I prefer to focus on the shapes I have initially shared with you here. In my opinion, the research world in this field is just beginning, and its implications could be very significant for humanity. Let's take this journey in small steps so that the change can be comfortably embraced by those who witness the results of the research. I wish you all a lot of love and success in life, and I want to see you enjoying these colorful, spiritual shapes, because the whole purpose is to make you happy and peaceful through this art. Thank you very much for watching the video. Yours, Amitai Angle.
We're making this link available so all of you can go back and review it, because it's such a magnificent work of art, and it relates to so many things that all of us are studying: the Deva evolution, the rays, the planes, and the idea that these realities in the etheric, astral, mental plane and above are so ethereal and their colors are so luminous, it's almost impossible to describe. But AI, in ever such slow increments, is bringing a lot of these etheric and astral colors right down onto our level. Now, granted, they're not the full impact, but they can be like a bridge that we can follow back. So, Mike, if you could put that in the chat box, that link, I'd appreciate it.
And we'll also have it with the recording. Duane, you just kind of addressed this issue, but I wanted you to know that Heliosoul said that she can't wait to see the effort of using AI working for spiritual work.
Yes, unfortunately, many new inventions, ideas, or technologies are immediately translated into the capitalist system into advertisements and hypnotic symbols that will attract you to purchase some product or some service. And I'm not saying that is like a bad thing, but it's really only preparatory to the revolutionaries and the disciples like all of you who could imagine it being used differently and for the work of service. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open the discussion to review any ideas or insights that any of you have of maybe how you think this could be used in service and with the advanced groups with which you work. And I do
Okay.
know many of you personally, and I know that there's so many of you who have this strong artistic talent or inclination. And although this shouldn't be just pigeonholed as a fourth ray expression, it definitely, as we will see as we go through this presentation, does relate to the fourth and seventh rays. So now the floor is open if anybody would like
Okay.
to.
Duane,
Yes,
Diana has her hand up, but Diana, let me just read your chat first, and then then you can go, please. She says, imagine DK's teachings translated into 3 dimensions with colors and sounds according to their qualities. No more written words, organisms, only preparation to penetrate the 4th, 5th, and 6th dimensions, some of which DK refers to in TCF.
beautiful.
What happened to your hand? Did you want to say something else, Diana?
My mistake, but by the way, I use artificial intelligence just to find images that can inspire the people during the full moon in presentation. That's all what can I do by the moment.
Yes, full moon presentations. And DK, when you're reading, and this is true of Blavatsky, when you're reading through the Tibetan's material, he often stops and says, or shares what he calls an excerpt from the old commentary. And the old commentary is almost like a different departure from his sort of sequential fifth ray minutia that he puts out, which is really excellent and creates a wonderful base or foundation. But the old commentary, it goes off onto these almost sweeping poetical narratives, almost like Agni Yoga in the Roerich material. And he indicates that the most advanced teachings that he is presenting through Raja Yoga is found in the old commentaries. And he also says symbols can be approached with greater comprehension if they're put into visual form. So Diane, you're excellent. Going from the technical, the sort of the lower fifth ray into the higher fifth ray in making these teachings organic. That is a wonderful, wonderful insight, Diana, making them, because the newer generations are more visual. Now, neuroscience has proven this, and it's a given if you're around the younger generations. They would prefer to see visual images maybe during a narration because they get it. They get it faster, they get it more holistically. Okay, any additional comments?
We have tons of additional comments and we have a couple of hands, but let me read some of what we've got. Heliosol says, mind blowing. Duane, will you take some students? And then she says, I am noticing how AI began forming own interpretation of the Zune summary of meetings for spiritual work.
Yes, excellent. And to answer your question, Helios, I really don't take on students. I work with people. And I have found that if you're not careful and take the position of a teacher, quote unquote, that you've created a separation between you and the person and the people and the groups with which you work. Because every person in this group is a leader and a teacher and a conveyor of light. And it reminds me of Rumi when he was making his transition from like the third initiation to the fourth, and he got up in front of he had formed an esoteric school, and he was a scholar, one of the greatest Persian scholars in the world. And he got up there with his 200 pages that he was going to read from and go through all this wonderful technical minutia. And he looked out over the audience and he said, in this moment of epiphany and revelation, he said, I am so sorry. By becoming your teacher, I have marginalized you. I have put you out there. Whereas during this moment of revelation, and he took his papers and he threw them in the air and they scattered all around this huge auditorium, he said, it's the heart. And everything we do must work our way slowly to that revelation. And then he said, shockingly to all of his students, he said, gamble everything for love. Anyway, so and not to go off on a extraneous toot here, but teachers are really in certain ways passe. There are guides, there are facilitators, and you will know who they are because they will let you in. And to say one last quote by the famous philosopher, German philosopher Goethe, he said, you will only truly learn from those you love. And this is what this group is about. It's about booting up the mental body and making it clear and well articulated, but learning the techniques through color and sound and geometry and symbol to traverse over into the intuition, which is facilitated by these different mediums that we're using, but it ends in a totally different revelation. The revelation that this is your group, that you belong here, that this is just not the impartation of a lot of technical information, but it's your opportunity to share what is in your higher mind and in your heart. Okay, any additional comments?
Lots. Michael Crow responded to Heliosol and he said, yes, referenced the AI forming its own interpretations. He said, yes, this could be a good thing with pure data sets. If different nuance and interpretation is shaded by specific personality interests, then it causes an issue because peer summaries are super useful and they are not needing to be edited as much.
Yes, excellent insight, Michael. Thank you.
And then Heliosol says, where can one see the old commentary?
It's scattered throughout all of the Tibetan's material, but I think the Arcane School may have synthesized all that into a booklet at the Lucius Trust. So I would inquire there. I have a copy, but it's if you can believe this, this is how old it is. It's a mimeographed. How many here can remember what a mimeograph is? Excellent, thank you. Okay, any additional comments?
Yes, and hands and everything. But okay, one more comment I'll read, and then Ariane, I'll get to you. Okay. Susie says DK has said that the first of the fourth ray art forms to come through in new ways will be language. How do you see this in terms of AI?
This is an important statement, and it's something that I was going to share a little later in the presentation, but this is a perfect place to do it. According to the Tibetan, the greatest form of art is Aquarian thinking, because this fourth ray influence of art and creation, when it's understood through the mind, it can be applied to all departments of life, not just tempera, clay, oil, sculpture, or even electronics. It can apply to human harmonious livingness. So that is a very, very important point, and we're going to discuss it in greater detail. There's a lot of fourth ray and seventh ray in these presentations, but we want to be inclusive, and to the best of our ability, we want to include all of the rays because they all have unique contributions. And as those contributions are understood, they begin to fuse and synthesize with other rays until when you step back, you really have just one ray, which is the first ray, expressing all the other rays simultaneously. Excellent. Any additional comments?
Let's go to the hands. Ariane, you want to go ahead? Can you unmute
Ariane,
yourself? Can you unmute yourself now?
Can you hear me?
we hear you, but you might have to put the volume up slightly.
That's as good as it gets. Is that good?
Better, yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm using my computer today. Normally I use my phone. I just have a question and then a couple comments. The question is, Duane, could you just briefly summarize his method? He stated two different things. The man who did the video, he said that he was adding light to different flat spherical drawings. And then he said he was stacking polygons and inserting diverse light sources into these to create these images. Could you first explain his method just briefly, and then I have a couple.
That would be required with somebody who's far more astute with programming than I am. And it was Justin Wilkinson, who is always on the cutting edge of any kind of graphic artwork, who shared this video with me, and I am going to see him tomorrow, interestingly enough, because his parents, Bree and Fran, live just 15 minutes away from us. And he went through a lot of different ways of looking at this. And I can't really answer your question, but I can say this, and we'll throw that question out to any others out there who are programmers, that one of the areas of the ageless wisdom teachings that we have not really explored, and we will, is mathematics. Like when you understand like fractals, they're patterns, repeating patterns that follow mathematical formulas. In other words, we can look at it and say, oh, this is beautiful, this is organic, but behind it, when you're dealing with AI, are mathematics. And the way that he outlined, his technique of drawing light into or on three-dimensional objects and animated them and rotated them and made them morph into these exquisite designs are just breathtaking. And it reminds me of what the Tibetan has said in a number of his passages in his books, that it's incomprehensible for me to try to share the beauty, the exquisite transparency and luminosity of these forms on the high astral plane. And he said, this is one of the reasons why this Aquarian energy will help those empaths, those new souls, those advanced souls coming into incarnation, who not only understand group life because they've been down many of these things we're studying now in previous lifetimes, but they're going to share them in new and dynamic ways. And this gentleman probably works with a group of people, and there's a lot of fourth and seventh ray there. But that is a wonderful question, and that's what I hope to explore, because the Ariana, understanding technically this is a prerequisite for using software. Evidently, he's developing software. Now, all of you out there who have technical computer skills, imagining a program that you could purchase and you could start making your own luminous forms. When you made presentations or participated, like someone commented earlier about the meditations or the full moons or certain invocations, you could bring this in. You don't have to be an artist, technically speaking, but you will have to learn certain basics about how these programs run. So this guy is right on the cutting edge. Excellent. Thank you.
Oh, I have
Any
a couple
additional?
comments. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Because I have something to add, I think. And I discussed this briefly in Francis Donald's class, and I just want to bring it up here because I think the students may be different mostly. The first thing is about water, and the second thing is about light. So, you know, we know about Masaru Emoto, the
Yes.
citizen scientist of Japan who took water samples around Japan in different places, temples and waste dumps and such, and he froze them, and then he brought them out into his frozen laboratory, and as they were melting under the microscope, they either formed crystalline structures or not, depending on the negativity or the vibration of the water where he collected it at the time. And so for me, my understanding of that is not only all things are vibrating and have their own signature, their vibratory imprint, and that we are all vibrating here, and that vibration becomes more refined as we evolve, as we become less negative, as we purify ourselves both from the understanding spiritually of the Eastern and Western ways of doing that. I'm not talking about sin. I'm talking about a different process. So I think that's really important. And then I want to talk about the orbs. I mentioned before that there are people, and the person that I studied with just took one webinar with her, Diana Grace Butler. You can find her on YouTube. She's taken thousands of photographs of basically just light sources in her apartment or out in nature using a camera, digital camera, cheap camera, and she uses a piece of glass in between the object and her camera, and she shows these extraordinary bubble-like forms of light, iridescent light, vibrating and shifting in color in those places.
Awesome.
And so I just want to make 2 points about that. For me, my understanding, I tried to share this with a group, but it, published in a magazine, but it was sort of not out there. What I understand is that when we think about the Akashic records or our karma, that possibly, this is my hypothesis, that our vibrations, our karma, that means our behavior, our thoughts, and our feeling is recorded by the light, the images, the water around us. And somehow that gets stored or recorded. Because so it's not only what we do, like in the privacy of our home, because no one's watching us, no one's relating to that, but that also has a karmic imprint or impress. And how is that being recorded? Perhaps by light or water. And that could be one form. And then the last thing I want to mention, and I partially mentioned it to the class, is that when I took that webinar, I was, taking screenshots of her beautiful orbs of light while she presented them. And when I went back later on my computer, a picture appeared, which was the portrait of Jesus, actually appeared on my computer instead of one of the images that she had shown. She didn't have that image. It just came to me and my computer, and so I shared that. But what I didn't share in Francis Donald's class is they were asking me to share the link with the group, a few of these links to Diana Grace Butler's, and that image appeared to me on the computer again, the image in the face of Jesus right again at that time. And so I'm just sharing that we have feedback, but are we here? Are there eyes to see? Are there ears to hear? Are we here to experience the livingness of our life as it is happening? And of course, you have to be exquisitely sensitive and attuned to that, both to your inner world and to the external world. But also, what could we be missing by not, spiritualizing every moment and reorienting ourselves to that? And for me, service is a function of that. Service is a function of the soul. It's not one or the other. I'm just interested in my own spiritual development. It's always a both and. And when we see people who are very evolved, even this man who made the video, he's making it available freely. That's a sign that he's like an inventor, an artist, and also he's an initiate willing to give up whatever the profits or his sense of control are about his art. So I just share that both are
Well,
there.
that's excellent. And I appreciate that. There's so much that you've shared. I don't think we would have time to review all of it, but I would say this, that the idea of synchronicity is always within and around us, especially if you're sensitive to energy, telepathically, psychically. And I've had a lot of very odd things happen in my life where things appeared out of seemingly nowhere. So I can understand your sharing and the importance of what you just related. Yes, the Akashic records, they, through the individual and their permanent atom, records everything. And your work with light affects the advancement of the permanent atoms. And when you're really advanced, permanent atoms, they disappear. and you have direct contact with your higher soul and upper triad. And water is a good analogy with Emoto. So thank you so much. Okay, any additional comments?
We got 3 more hands and then I'll get to the comments. Heidi, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to add a couple of things. There's a woman that has done work recently, which I found to be quite amazing with water. And given that our human embodied formations are made out of water, the woman's name is Veda Austin. If you haven't seen anything that she's done, she's been doing repeated work with water and freezing it and then doing artwork with it, which is pretty amazing. One of the
Awesome.
things that was lovely was she put a sunflower seed into water for 15 seconds. And she repeated it. She did it as a more scientific, so that it could be seen as more credible. And then took a photograph of this petri dish that she had put it in, and it actually, the frozen water created the entirety of the flower of the sunflower. So the seed, within the seed, the water was able to express the entirety of the flower. I found that to be quite beautiful. But more importantly, with this work of light and these images, for me, this is really the images that are being portrayed are very much how, in my understanding, how life actually comes into manifestation through the dance of light and space and particles. And our eyes are an amazing acupuncture point, the largest one in our embodied form, and the pupil is actually empty. And when it begins to reflect light, it actually speaks through our nervous system. And so for me, watching that, I felt like the energy was actually speaking to the forms that are already present in nature, and there was a dialogue happening between them, and it's more of our true nature, and that's how I saw it or felt it, and it's expressed in beauty, and that revealing beauty that is ever present in every moment. And when we connect with that, what's needed actually comes into life for the good of the whole. So, and I guess it's like anything, when you put something to the whole of humanity, it becomes a discerning process for humanity to be able to use something for the good of the whole and not for self-service. And that's actually, humanity's evolving edge, that it actually has to evolve out of its self-centered service and into a greater service, which is really planetary. And the only other thing I will mention is a new book that came out called Becoming Earth. And it's written by a gentleman named Ferris. I don't know if I'm going to say his name, Jabbar, Jabr. And he wrote an article in the New York Times that was all about the vibrations of life and the history and how it is evolving itself, and how the participation of humanity can, to me, that's actually what it means, is to understand what it means to become a steward of the planetary being, is to actually understand and this dance that is actually happening both within us and around us, and in everything. and how to participate and create something atmospherically beautiful and radiant and homogeneous is our birthright. And that's what has come for me. So I appreciate you giving me space to speak into it.
Excellent. Those are wonderful insights. And the rationale of how the pattern of the sunflower can emerge from just a little seed is only understood when you see that the seed is an extension of the etheric, that the etheric form is already there. And this is how it works its way down into matter, or the lowest level, by utilizing a host, which is the tiny little seed. And that's the same with us. We're seeds of the soul, and when properly fed and watered and nurtured, we fully flower on the material plane. It's a symbiotic relationship. Everything, and this is the basis of holism, that the trees, the flowers, mushrooms, grasses, they all are a part of what we call the vegetable kingdom, and they're all connected. And humanity, even though they have individualized and found themselves separated, unlike some of these other kingdoms, they, even with limitations and liabilities, by studying the great law or the laws of the universe, can work their way back to wholeness and see their unity and their brotherhood, sisterhood with all other human beings. So that was excellent, Heidi. Thank you for sharing.
Duane, thank you. Thank you for
And
completing that circle. It needed that completion, and I so appreciate that.
this book, Becoming Earth, if you at some point could put a link in the chat, it would be available for us at some point maybe to explore, if you have access to it. Okay, any additional comments?
We have a number of comments from earlier. Heliosoul was talking about sharing of the heart, and Francis said, "Can we think from the heart and love from the mind?" And Lenny said, "Listen through the eyes and see through the ears." And Janet said, "And sense through the soul." And Lenny said, "And synthesizing through all of that." So that was
Yes,
a string that came in there.
absolutely. When you are operating on the higher subplanes of the mental, you are simultaneously, not always, but usually there's a parallel opening of the heart. And in those very higher subplanes, the two become blended. And yes, they still maintain their own identity, but they do it through like seeing a sphere that's semi-permeable, and they both appear to reside in the same space, but if you look really carefully, there is a slight differentiation, but they can relate back and forth. They're like one organ. And this is like what HPB said when she said, when you're working on the lower levels of the mental plane and the lower levels of the astral, even though they're two separate principles, she said in esotericism, we often call them kama manas, like they're one organ of perception, and yet technically they are different. It's sort of a paradox. Excellent comment, Helios. And the idea of hearing, and seeing. We know that the devas are just the opposite of humanity. And when they hear and see differently than we do, and when we fuse with that kingdom, we take on their added sight and their added hearing as they take on our added sight and added hearing. And many of their qualities that we have not fully developed transit into our auric field, and many of the qualities that we have transit into their sheaths and bodies. And we're going to explore that a little later when we get into color and sound in the devas a little further in the presentation. So excellent. Well, good. We'll take another couple questions and then we'll go on from there.
Okay, Ariana shared the website for Diana Grace
Oh, excellent.
on YouTube. Janet says Veda's work is fantastic. Thanks for commenting about her work. Ariana says, yes, water is conscious. And maybe would be there to receive and give that which is worthy of the world around us. And I think I'm all caught up, but then we have
Okay.
a new hand. So
Okay, we'll take that last one.
Barbara, go ahead, please.
Yes, I'm referring to the work of John Michel, Sacred Geometry, who recognized the difference of art that was a sacred geometry that was drawn by his hand and therefore embedded in the creative hierarchy, and machine-derived sacred geometry that was not embedded in the creative hierarchy. So I've noticed that sometimes when there is a meditation involved with something generated by AI, that there is some of the creative hierarchy that is brought in. And there's been a neurosurgeon who tested the life quality of some AI, and in certain situations, it's very low. But I'm just wondering if there's an intentionality, a meditation, a way of embedding AI into the creative hierarchy that will really enhance the transformative powers.
Excellent. I would simply point out, and those are excellent statements, that we have 12 creative hierarchies and they all occupy, even though they work together in unison, different departments. And these creative hierarchies have certain symbols. And I have presented this group intermittently with those as we've waded through a lot of different insights around the Ageless Wisdom teachings. But I would say that these hierarchies with their symbols can be grounded by an artist that has the alignment, because otherwise there'd be no interest if there wasn't a spiritual alignment to these higher hierarchies to some degree. And then if they have the technical training or the skill to render it as accurately as possible under the extenuating circumstances and limitations of the material world. And DK says this over and over and over, and Alice Bailey says the same thing. We just wish we could show some visual representation of this idea of light seeping into the planet from the etheric, from the astral, from the higher mental, because it's such a glorious revelation that it's just puts the teachings in a whole new venue, a whole new category. And like someone mentioned earlier, even though I think we're always going to be using the lower mind as a foundation and a base of entry, if you're not translating all this minutia at some point into visual images or meditations or colored animations, and we're going to explore that a little further in this Zoom meeting. We're going to take Michael Robbins, the genius of Michael Robbins, and in some very small way, show it visually through an animation. And you'll get an idea of how creative we can be with this information and with these new technologies. Because up until recently, in the last like 20, 30, 40 years, the purity and the clarity, and this is also true, was not available. And I recall some NASA cosmologist saying in a commentary that up until this was in like the 80s, he said, not until recently can we present to humanity some of these awesome revelations we're having with all of our satellites and probes, because the technical artwork was not capable of doing. But he said now we can show explosions of the sun and all these solar flares and all kinds of stuff we take for granted. But back in the 50s and 60s, it was not that easy. So even science and technology in ways that may be difficult for us to fully fathom are using these new tools. Okay, so let us move on now to a few comments, a few quotes the Tibetan says around the new visualization. And we're going to explore this a little further when we get into the 6 stages of building the Antakarana, and the number 3 in the order of their importance is visualization. Okay, the unfoldment of the senses of vision and of the sense of synthesis through visualization will lead to a sense of livingness in form. All creative art will be fostered by this training, and the new art of the future in all departments of creativity will be rapidly developed as this training proceeds. So when you meditate, when you visualize, when you align, you are penetrating and you are directing your attention up into new levels of reality that will present you with new forms. And we don't go from the formless into, from form life into formlessness with one fell swoop. We take the matter that we have around us, and through visualization, we draw down those forms of energy that will transmutate them into something more expressive of livingness in form. And it's all departments of life. It's not just the artistic, although we're referring to the artistic here. Let's do another quotation. Would somebody like to read this?
I'll read it.
Thank you.
The restoration of the mysteries. The mysteries will restore color and music as they essentially are to the world, and do it in such a manner that the creative art of today will be to this new creative art what a child's building of wooden blocks is to a great cathedral such as Durham or Milan. The mysteries, when restored, will make real, in a sense incomprehensible to you at present, the nature of religion, purpose of science, and the goal of education. These are not what you think today.
That's a pretty prophetic statement that I find is very relevant to these new forms of art, that you just don't look at an object, you look into it, you look through it, and it invokes a sense of participation. Is probably a very inadequate word, but it reminds me of the guru, the high priest of the media, Marshall McLuhan, who said back in the 60s, he said, the new media that's coming will not be like anything you've ever experienced. You just don't look at it. It comes out of a monitor. It comes out of a light board with these flashing lights, and it enters into you. It absorbs you. It takes you over. You on many levels of sensory experience, and that prophecy has proven to be true. And I am always impressed with what HPB said when she said, I have outlined all the different stages of development through these series of symbols. And she said, the training is to expose yourself to them and then to step back and allow yourself to move into them and through them, and imagine that you are the symbol looking out at the instrument, at the reflection, which is your personality. And even though that sounds a little sci-fi to some people, it is actually the purpose of meditation and invocation and prayer is not just to ask and demand and need, which may be a good place to start, but to stop and allow the projected visualization, the projected invocation, and we're going to go over this in greater detail later, to create a path, a bridge, a demand that says, I'm here, I'm ready, I want to be included in the soul's life on its own plane. I'm no longer satisfied with the soul throwing down a few crumbs, a few revelations here and there, which I appreciate. I want to enter fully into that great solar angel, that great egoic being, which is the soul on its own plane. Okay, so we will explore that in a few more slides. Someone like to read this for us?
Michael Stacy, you want to read that for us, please?
I can do that. This fourth ray is, in the last analysis, the ray which teaches the art of living in order to produce a synthesis of beauty. There is no beauty without unity, without embodied idealism, and the resultant symmetrical unfoldment.
So keep in mind that, and I apologize for being repetitive here, this is not just about the fourth ray. This is not about me wanting to expose this beautiful group who I love dearly to beautiful pictures. And that in itself would not be a bad thing. But these images and these symbols are in many ways soul orientated and hierarchically impressed on the inner sheaths and different levels. So as you work with this material, you'll find many things that will come to you that you may not have originally imagined, or even maybe was wanting to have happen. But one thing I can assure you, it will be bigger, bolder, and more beautiful, because these higher realities always are. But it's sort of like priming the pump. with your visualization capacity. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have a very quick refresher of our last Zoom meeting, so that when we get into the rays, in the animation of the rays and your charts, it'll be clearer and make better sense. So we presented this, and it simply shows the 7 ray types in a very simplified form. You have a personality ray, which is made up of 3 lower rays: the physical, etheric, the astral, and the mental. You have the soul ray, and then you have the one monadic life and its unique expression or ray quality. And they are expressed through these 7 basic esoteric colors. Now, again, I went over fairly in fair amount of detail why that you can't be rigid about the rays and the colors. This is what's generally associated, and I've written a commentary on it. It's you'll find it at my website. It's called The Rays and the Planes, and it goes into a lot of detail. But these are basically the rays esoterically, and when we get to a ray chart, you can see how Alice Bailey, sort of in the upper part, that first chart, shared these. And she probably didn't have the monadic ray, because that was no doubt beyond the majority of her students. But the soul, the personality, and 3 lower vehicles, she calibrated in this way so that like when you get into the Dina books and DK is giving out meditations and suggestions for his disciples to move forward to the next level, he'll bring this out. He'll explain, you have this 3rd ray, you have this 7th ray, and it's a wonderful series of teachings because it makes it practical. Whereas so much of the Bailey material appears, and I'm trying to choose my words with care here, appears to be impractical on a certain level, but later on you realize, oh, wow, this connects with this, and this connects with something else. In other words, the Tibetan is trying to show this huge cosmology through 24 books, and unfortunately, you're not going to get it by just reading one book. You have to delve into a number of them for this synthesis to come about. Okay, so let's go now to the little ray chart that we are now using. In other words, I've gone from this sort of a linear bar graph to one that's circular. And again, we need not go into this in detail other than say that the Tibetan clearly states the rays should be seen as circular rings. And this is also true of the planes. And so I took that prompting, and now the ray charts that I work on start with what you've just seen, but they end here. Now, I had Michael put that in the chat so everyone could take it and, should they choose, use it creatively and maybe start putting in what they think their rays are. Now, if no one has done that or even given it additional thought, that's not an issue. But the question I have is there anyone out there who's actually maybe took this little bear chart and maybe started to work on it in a very preparatory way? So it's open now for anybody to communicate.
Okay, I did.
Excellent.
And you know that because then you swirled it for me. We have some comments here.
Okay.
So let me just read them, and a lot of them started earlier. So
Okay.
But, they just were going, but it gives people a chance to catch up.
Yes,
So Susie says immersion, to become permeable to the energies and experience.
yes, that is so true. Thank you, Susie.
Stefan says Philip Glass, Open Kingdom. I think he might be referring to a book.
Or musician.
Yeah, that could be. Michael Stacy says, and yet all must be implemented through the soul qualities of harmlessness and selflessness, and especially love.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. That-
Greg said, well, sorry, did you want to add something?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Greg says there's an interesting quote from a treatise on white magic, which seems particularly valid in our process of developing this kind of new art. Master DK suggests that at some point, the initiates of our race will develop a technique or new focus related to applied esoteric science, in particular with respect to esoteric astrology, and how in time there will be initiates working with this kind of art science that might be relevant to our discussion from PWM on white magic. He says the pages in TWM are 442 to 444, more specifically 443.
Excellent.
I put your website in there for everyone. And then Greg
Excellent.
says, when we integrate these individual rheological energies in an active animative process for describing the manvantaras of each of us in our greater work as shift out of the fourth kingdom of humanity into the fifth kingdom of the soul.
Excellent.
And I think I've caught up with all of the
Okay, excellent, Greg. And I would have to read the quote in the context in which it was given. And I have come across passages where the Tibetan has said that when mystical geometry is fused with esoteric astrology, we are going to have a revelation about these different principles and laws. And I don't know if we'll get around to it today, but this is one of my themes. And if you look at this picture in front of you, you'll notice we have these 6 circles and we have the 6-fold ray chart. But if you look above that, you'll see I have rising sign, the opposite, and the sun sign. And they also have their ray influences. And keep in mind, I'm really simplifying some very, very abstract concepts to make it easy to assimilate. And it's not because nobody here would get it. It's because of the time factor. But, and I'm going to show this in one of my other presentations with BL's permission, what I did with her chart is she put in her 6 rays, then she gave me her rising, opposite sign, and sun sign, and I took those 3 and I went around in a circle and I made it into an equal arm cross. So when in the future you see her 6 rays, her 6-fold ray chart animated, you'll also see in the background the 3 influences, those 3 primary influences astrologically. And it is, in my opinion, breathtaking. And it's just a way of looking at a person, looking through their personality and through their sheaths, their rays, their bodies, their astrological influences, and have it all animated in motion at the same time. So that's where we're moving.
I confirm it is breathtaking. And he put it to music like he does everything else with my favorite mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. So I mean, it's such a beautiful and heartwarming meditation or pick me up, or it's gorgeous.
Excellent, BL. Thank you.
Okay, before you go on, Ariane
Yes.
asks, what is the function importance of looking at the opposite? Is this the opposite of the ascendant or the sun sign?
You know what? We have astrologers here, and I'm going to let you handle that, BL.
Okay, it's the opposite of the sun sign. And that's, of course, the earth point. And DK talks about the earth point in a number of ways. He says we don't begin to feel it until we begin to respond to the esoteric rulers. And he also talks about it being the link or the direction towards our monad, the contact with our monad. So that is what the importance of the opposite sign is, the opposite of the sun sign.
Excellent.
Can I ask,
And
is that the esoteric ruler of what? What ruler of what sign or what? When you say
Sagittarius, is it? Yeah, Earth is the esoteric ruler of Sagittarius.
and the rising sign we know is where we're headed. It's where the soul is found and where the group life is its highest level of potency. Excellent. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take the ray chart of beloved Michael Robbins, whose tireless service to all of us and to the planet is so full and so beautiful. And even with his passing, it just, his work gains in popularity, and his link with those in the group who he was intimate with still remains and is growing. Just, I had such a privilege to work with this man for over 40 years, right from the start, right from the stables there in New Jersey. And it was a wild ride with an Aries, me being a Cancer, but I regret not one moment of it. So at some point, I offered to do Michael's six-fold ray chart. And keep in mind that you can have a ray chart done up, and 2 years later, you can say, like, let's take Michael's chart right here. See where he has astral? You have the two key colors associated with astral, which is rose and light blue. And he has 2-6, because at the time I did this, which was quite a while back, he felt that he may have come in with a 6-ray astral body and that he was transmutating it into a 2nd-ray astral body. Now, there may be another chart out there that he did where he felt under the impression of his soul, his beautiful wife Tulia and his beautiful daughter, and all of the wonderful people that have that 2nd-ray quality who worked with him, helped him transform that 6th-ray into the 2nd-ray. So charts are organic. And yeah, the monadic ray may not change, or the soul ray, or even the personality ray regularly. They take many cycles. Your personality ray and the 3 lower instruments that are reflected through it can change in one lifetime. And now the 3rd ray is normally associated with the color green. See how on physical etheric I had that little circle that has green and a 3 next to it to the right. Well, he felt comfortable with his 3rd ray physical etheric body. And if you've ever done any long meditations and programs with him, he could sit for hours and hours and hours, and all the other seventh ray people like me would be laying on the floor or doing somersaults or, you know, trying to get energy into that seventh ray body. But Michael, with his Aries and his third ray physical, hey man, he could endure is the only word that I can think of. But now, if we take the third ray of his monad, and the personality ray, excuse me, we have green for third ray monad, blue for second ray soul, then the personality ray and the higher mental ray are both the fourth ray. And he wanted the color yellow to be represented there. Anyway, I'm actually looking at a different chart than I've done up for him more recently, but you basically get the idea. Starting from the outer periphery, third ray, physical, sixth ray, astral, but I have a double ray there. That's where the blue comes in because he was transmutating it into that second ray. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to see Michael's chart animated. And you'll have to note several things. That the video, the animation is not static. It palpitates. It organically throbs. And this is what the Tibetan says about these higher levels. They are not stationary as we understand the term. They are in a state of flux. They are organic, and they do palpitate. They palpitate and they move organically to the great heartbeat of the one monadic life, which also is an expression of an even higher life. So all these different principles and rays we're going to see as an organic composite. And you'll also see several other rays that come in at the end of this that are not represented in his chart, but I brought him in because at the end of his video, this is where he's going. We're seeing him as he now exists in this video, but at the end, you'll see it drifting into all the seven rays and where he is going. Okay, relax, take a deep breath, and use this as a meditation to create this alignment with Michael on the inner planes and his steadfast work with us in incarnation or out of incarnation physically. And this was his favorite, one of his favorite musical pieces that we added to it.
Duane,
Yes,
sorry, we can't see the swirling.
but it hasn't started yet, that's why. But thank you. Should be starting. It's giving everybody a chance to see the chart a second time. Here it is, thank you. just occurred to me that I have longer videos that deal with the geometry of the soul in the higher planes, but they're like 20, 25 minutes long. And if there's anybody in the group that would like to have access to several of those, you'd have to send Michael your email so I can send them to you directly. And there's also a possibility I could make a link in the next presentation, because many of you are lifetime meditators. And even though you may appreciate these shorter meditations and animations I've created and presented, you might like longer ones. So I'll try to keep that in mind.
Hey, Duane,
Yes.
I could put them on the website, your website, for next time.
Okay, that's a
You
great
could send them to
idea.
me and I could post them all on a new section.
Yes, that would be perfect, because we're really only covering a small amount of divine geometry with what I've already given and what I'm going to be given, because again, it would just take too long. But it creates an unobstructed meditation where you can really, really get into it and not have your attention brought back. Okay.
We have a number of
Yes.
comments. You want me to go through them, and then we have a hand up?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So in response to what we talked about before, Susie Miller says, I've wondered with repeated incarnations and the monad remaining unchanged, would this opposite point refer to how we reach points of potential contact with said monad in the particular life?
Well, this is
Would
an
you like me?
excellent. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, would you like me to give an astrological perspective on this?
Absolutely.
Okay. Each sign, each planet have multiple meanings, multiple connections. And so it can refer to the potential contact, it can refer to the differences of energy patterns within that same monad. And it can do it through the variety of energies that each sign has. It can also do it through the decanates that are associated with the sign. So there's a number of ways astrologically that even though the monad would not change, you would feel that energy pattern that it points to. Did you want to add to that?
Yes. I think it was a couple of Zoom meetings back. I showed a chart of the monad, the soul, and the personality, and their rays, and then the three lower rays of the personality. And I described it in this way, and this is really directly from the Tibetan's teachings, but slightly abridged to not get overly technical. Everything is the result of the monad. It's like we're children born out onto the physical plane trying to understand our identity without ever meeting our father and mother. And so in the study of the esoteric principles and laws, we always have to keep in mind everything comes from the monad. And how this works is that the monad sounds its note and it listens attentively to what is lacking within its makeup. And yes, we think of the monad as being perfect, but no, this is why there are different ray monads, because they excel at that particular ray. And yes, those different ray monads have built in lesser degrees of those rays, but not necessarily fully developed. The monad sounds its notes, here's what's lacking, and then for growth, it sends down just like a Rose does, it sends these tendrils, these roots down into the ground. It sends the different threads, and they have technical names, but we call them the antakarana. Then these threads ground themselves on the high mental plane as the soul body, the divine ego, the jiva. And then the jiva, in turn, what it does is it sounds its note, it flashes forth its color, it sees what's lacking on its level of expression, and knowing that, it sends down these tendrils or roots, also called the antakarana bridge, right down into the material plane, and there it creates the physical etheric vehicle with its ray, the astral body with its unique ray, and the lower mind with its unique ray. So when you look at the video at some future point, a second time that I just presented, you'll see that it starts out as a very small dot, almost like a water drop in a large body of still water. And that's the monad sending down these rings. We say that they're threads, but in reality, they're vortices and rings, like peeling a bell, and seeing that as these compression waves moving out. And these compression waves of the monad come down in and create on the soul level, on the high mental plane, and then they filter down, each time widening the rings. In other words, when you first look at Michael's monadic stimulation, it's just a little tiny drop. But as it descends and the soul body is created, then these rings are really moving out. And when they hit the outer periphery, they have reached the bottom of the descent and they ground themselves. And what we do here with the 6 stages of building the Antakarana is we create an Aquarian scientific method of getting back up to those higher levels that we know we're affiliated with, that we're linked with, but the link is so slender and so tenuous, we're not fully aware of it. And DK says the Antakarana bridge at first is no thicker than a hair on your head. Well, that is profound. But that hair, that descent of monadic life stimulates, well, it creates, and then it continues to stimulate the soul on its own plane. The soul on its own plane that created the lower personality levels continues to pour that down into the personality. And so let's review the 6 stages of building the Antakarana, or our part in this. And I am reminded of what someone said earlier that was very eloquent, put in slightly different words, but had the same identical meaning. And I've shared this before, but it's such a classic quote by the mystic occultist Gurdjieff, who came to the West from the Balkan countries at the turn of the century and started serious group occult work. And he said in one of his meditations, "Let us lift with this meditation the burden of our common Father in heaven." Well, wow. Can we do that without fully developing our soul recognition or our monadic intent? Yes. Every effort, every small progress, however humble that you make, you are, because you are cells in the body of this great Father, and I might add, Mother in heaven. You play your part. You co-create. We are co-creating right now as you listen to me ramble on about these. As you have your own unique thoughts, your own unique affiliations and ray dispositions. Because if we were to take every person in this group and say, just hypothetically, because I make no assertions, and said that the group can synthesize all of us into some great, powerful, radical being of which we really know very little, would I be making a statement of fact, or would it be just some figment of my imagination? This is what the masters outline. This is what they say. When you get two or more gathered in my name, I will be there. And that means the Christ emerging within all of you will flower under this impression, and all the other wonderful groups that you work with. Okay, intention. This is getting a little technical, but I'm going to simplify it. Intention, visualization, projection, the first three aspects of the building process. What is intention? It's holding the mind focused not just on like what you want to do, but creating a point of tension on the high mental plane and holding it there. And that is an expression of the third aspect of deity, active intelligence. Visualization, constructing a blueprint of the work to be done. This is where you pull in the astral body, because the astral body gives more detail and it gives warmth. It gives this yearning, this high idealism to create this bridge that the mind can visualize, but it has to have that warmth of the astral plane and its color and its note or notes. And then projection, you drive the ray of the personality up onto the level of the soul. This is the first stage of these three different sequential outlines. You drive the ray of the personality up onto the soul level, and then you blend the two together. So what you're looking at is not just like, let's say you're using a circular vortice or just a circle as the personality ray. In the center of that, you'll have another circle, which will be the soul ray. And the soul ray will dominate the personality ray. And yet the personality ray gives the soul an additional quality, because all these descending energies that I just outlined, now they're being returned with the experience of having been down here. In other words, as you go through your daily life and you have all these different experiences, these are not just for your personal development, they actually affect the soul on its own plane. Now, I know this is a radical departure from what many of the teachings sort of indicate, but this is what DK says when you get into cosmic fire very deeply. We are co-creating, not just for ourselves, not just for our group brothers and sisters, but for deity itself. We're all connected together. And I might add, DK says there's going to be a coming yoga called Agni Yoga that is going to slowly, because Raja Yoga has been here for tens of thousands of years, if not longer, and will continue to be here for a long time. But now it's being infused with this new Agni Yoga. And people often ask me, but what is Agni Yoga? How is it different from the other yogas? Well, that's a question that could demand a whole presentation, but I would simply say this. In the intention, in the visualization, and in the projection, you are now using the three aspects of deity down here through the personality. Intention is the third aspect of deity, visualization is the second aspect of deity, and projection is the first aspect of deity. You're using your full range of divine qualities, whereas other And I have to be careful here because there are other yogas out there that don't go under the name of Agni Yoga, but they are still doing what I'm outlining here. They're using the intelligence, the astral, the high astral, Buddhic, and the will, the will of the person who's doing this. And then that takes us to number 4, invocation, evocation. When you complete these first 3, that is the invocation sent out on a stream of light, love, geometric visualization, whatever you conceive of it to be. And it is powerful. It will penetrate through the ethers. You are invoking, you are sending out, you are demanding recognition. And then the soul on its own plane, it senses the legitimacy that this is not just some personality thing that you're doing because you're having a bad day with your partner. No, it's because you want to be of greater service to the group to which you belong, to the family to which you belong, to the community. And yes, there's always going to be a little bit of personality in every invocation, or you wouldn't be here doing it. But that personality part becomes lost in the evocation part, because the evocation is when what you've invoked now descends. It descends into your auric field. And why we place so much importance on being able to know the art of dissipating lower thought forms from the auric field, so that the soul and the upper triad and the monad, they have a place to descend to. You might get their attention, and then they might start coming down these threads or vortices or ripples or whatever you want to call them. But then when they get close to you, you're thinking too hard about what you're doing. See, this is where you go from the second initiation into the early preparatory stages of the third initiation, where you have learned the technique of rendering the lower mind passive. It's not destroyed, doesn't cease to exist. It stays there, but it lets the soul take over your auric field and come into your heart, your higher mind, and into your physical etheric. And I apologize for going into this technically, but trust me, if you've read DK's teachings on this, it's like 30 pages, and it is so beautifully laid out like a science, and I am not doing it justice. But most of you have studied this already, so it's not new. And then the last 2 parts, which are the result of the earlier 4, is when all of this stabilizes, then you are resurrected out of the tomb of matter. Then you have risen to the soul and then up into the monadic life. So, are there any questions in regards to this? And I repeat this. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
We
go
have
ahead.
several comments, and most of them are from earlier. And then Joe had her hand up for a long time, but I see that she's dropped it. But let me just start through the comments. Lenny says for us that the sun sign indicates the ray of personality. Opposite to the sun sign is the path to the monad. And the rising sign is what the soul indicates as the purpose in the present incarnation. Yes, that's what DK tells us in esoteric astrology.
Excellent, Lenny. Thank you.
And he talks about the yoga of synthesis. Stefan says, imagine we could make a movie where Duane is having a stall somewhere close to the Arctic light, where people can come and have their ray chart artwork fashioned and react in awe and love to Duane's delight.
Well, thank you. That's very sweet. And maybe somebody in this group knows how to do programming, because it's way beyond my comprehension. And I do this manually. I do up these charts manually, and it's very time consuming, but somebody will eventually come and they will develop a program that all you have to do is just click on the keyboard, and all the things that I do artistically through Photoshop can already be done in like preliminary prototypes. And maybe I'm not explaining this correctly, but everybody needs to have a ray chart, and everybody needs to be open to how creative that would be in, and they don't have to follow the Tibetans' outlines or Blavatsky or Rudolf Steiner or somebody else. They can take what they are doing that's working for them and maybe add little parts, little bits and pieces of what they garner here. Because we're not trying to change people's meditative techniques. We're trying to just add little additions that can make them better.
Then in reference to the MDR chart, Susie asks, should the mental yellow be green, or should the number be 4 and not 3?
Well, Michael and I and several other astrologers spent about a month exchanging notes, and I think I was able to demonstrate that DK uses the color green for active intelligence more than any other color. Now, he does use yellow, and that can relate to the mental plane, because even though the mental plane may be green, it has 7 subplanes, and yellow will be found on the 4th subplane. Plus, DK says that in a previous solar system, active intelligence at its highest level was yellow. And we carry over. There's no doubt in my mind that Michael Robbins was, and he always used to say he was a moon chainer, that he individualized in an earlier cycle, and that he was bringing a wealth of information and background, not just simply what he picked up in this lifetime, but in previous lifetimes. Now, that's an interesting and profound statement when you think most of us were individualized in the Earth chain, or in the Earth's in this solar system. Anyway, it's interesting. Okay, good. And
Susie says, may I suggest looking online into the fabulous work of a man named Jain, J-I-N, who has amazing insight into sacred geometry.
awesome. Could you put that link in the chat so we could all have a chance to review that?
And Francis says, Shambhala hierarchy and the oversoul of humanity, I think each has its own note, sound, color, hue, and symbol.
Well, that's where this whole thing is going. If I have not impressed upon this group the importance of knowing, not irrefutably, but having a general sense of what their rays are and what colors, and I've also presented some charts around notes, then I have failed miserably, because what Fran just outlined is really one of the basic keynotes and cornerstones of this work, that each person out here is unique. They express different ray qualities. And when you can learn those qualities and put them into a meditation, like I've shown here, number 1, 2, 3. At number 3, you drive with the power of your will these dual rays with their unique colors or notes up onto the soul and eventually triadic levels. It's not that esoteric. It's not that complicated. It's just that the way DK outlined it, you have to wade through so much material. I mean, the first thing that I came to the conclusion of when I started reading DK's works, which was Cosmic Fire, I should have never started with that book. Should have started with something a little bit on my level. I said to myself, either this guy's crazy or I got a lot to learn. And I read Cosmic Fire for about 12 hours straight. I was so intrigued until I had a migraine headache, and then I had to stop. So you can get burnt out on the technical details, but DK wants to convey to the incoming occultist, not merely the mystic, which is included in the occult path, but he wants a science. He wants, yeah, many variations, but a science of approach as we go into the Aquarian age. Because what we have now is a little of this and a little of that. And yes, they work and they're good and they took us to where we are. But there's another whole level. Okay, we're going to have to move along here after this next question.
Okay, really quick, Michael Crow put Becoming Earth or How Our Planet Came to Life by Ferris Jobber. He put that link in there.
Thank
And
you.
then Stefan says, does it make sense to say that monadic contact is established when you pacify the opposing within? For example, if you are a physical Leo Virgo, your opposing is Aquarius Pisces. And when you have understood yourself as your opposing, you have a Rama Lama ding dong.
I'm going to let you answer that, BL.
Well, yeah, actually, DK talks in esoteric astrology about we have to resolve the opposites. So once we awaken to the fact that there is an earth out there opposite the sun, but it will eventually point to our monadic influences. But what we have to do is we have to balance that sun-earth axis, just like the other axes that we have in our chart. And that's part of the work that we do, especially at the second initiation. So that's, the third initiation is where we get the real first inkling of the monadic contact. And once you've tackled those opposites and, balanced those out, then you're well on your way there, as Stefan says.
Excellent. There's
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, there's several more comments, but you need to move on. So
Yeah, we're closing in, but thank you for whatever comments. Okay, I'm going to skip a whole different section here, and we're going to get into sacred geometry very superficially so that I can close with a couple of really, really profound animations. So this is like a preview of what's coming next month. We're going to explore sacred geometry and how it's all built on the polyhedra or platonic solids. Only on the inner planes, they become much more luminous. But let me say this one quote by DK before we close with a couple of videos and then maybe a little more feedback. Who would like to read this quote by DK?
I can read it.
Thank you.
This morning, I would touch on the matter of egoic alignment again, showing you under the law of correspondences the universal application. It lies based in geometry or in figures and numbers. Each life that the personality leads is at the close represented by some geometrical figure, some utilization of the lines of the cube and their demonstrations in a form of some kind, intricate and uncertain in outline and crude in design, are the forms of the earlier lives. Definite and clear in outline are the forms built by the average advanced man of this generation. But when he steps upon the path of discipleship, the purpose consists in merging all these many lines into one line, and gradually this consummation is achieved. The master is he who has blended all the lines of the fivefold development, first into the three and then into the one. The six-pointed star becomes the five-pointed star, the cube becomes the triangle, and the triangle becomes the one, whilst the one, at the end of the greater cycle, becomes the point in the circle of manifestation.
Excellent, Heidi. Thank you. Thank you so much. Every ray has a particular geometric form, and although all occult groups don't always agree on those relationships, geometry to the rays, there's a pretty good consensus. And you can just look at this chart and get a quick overview. And we're going to go into this in much greater detail next presentation, because we've really covered a lot with color and sound in the rays. And this presentation next month will be on divine geometry. And we'll get into astrology. Oh, it's some of the things that DK says about astrology and astronomy, and seeing the chart of Venus or Uranus or Pluto going around the sun over a period of cycles creates the most exquisite geometric forms. So this is just sort of a teaser of what's coming next. And so, well, let's just share that quote. Developing intuitive knowledge, certain types with mathematical bent and with a tendency to divine geometry and space and time concepts will, with wisdom, follow the method of developing intuitive knowledge dealt with in this sutra. Others will find it of greater difficulty and would be wiser to turn to other forms of concentrated meditation. So there's many different approaches, and let's just close this with this. And this is a dodecahedron that ensouls all the other platonic solids, only it's done sort of transparent so you can see. And it'll give you an idea of how the polyhedra nest one within the other. I showed you the platonic solids all laid out, and they're all sort of different. But now you're going to see them as a unity and how they interface. the beauty of how all those polyhedral forms nest into each other is breathtaking. Do we have time for one short one to close?
Well, we started late, so sure.
Oh, thank you. Now, what you're going to see is similar to what you just saw, only on a much wider and vaster scale. And as we review these next month, I'm going to have everybody sort of pay attention to what part of the video or what geometric form they feel most harmonious or comfortable with. And it can be several. And you sort of use your intuition. But this is a magnificent video that shows you what can happen with polyhedra when you combine them into multi-levels. Well, thank you all for coming and being a part of this and contributing to the group life. It is such a joy to spend time in this group work. Love and light.
Thank you, Duane. And I'll get the recordings and I'll put the chat and I'll have the individual videos that Duane did for us. I'll have that out a little later this afternoon. So thank you,
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you.
just a reminder that in that chat, any of the links that were posted, you can go through the chat, save chat, and grab those links since there were a few links posted today.